A sustentabilidade pode ser um catalisador para impulsionar a inovação e o crescimento dos clientes, para melhorar as operações, avançar na inclusão e enfrentar alguns dos desafios mais complexos do mundo? Nós acreditamos que sim. Para nós, sustentabilidade significa responsabilidade e oportunidade. Isso exige ciência e colaboração. Focados em mudar nosso mundo, a próxima década será fundamental. Para criar um futuro melhor para o nosso planeta, todos nós devemos agir. Devemos fazer a nossa parte. É por isso que nós da Dow estamos acelerando nossas ações de sustentabilidade, concentrando nossos esforços em 3 áreas que mais impactam nosso negócio e onde podemos fazer a diferença: economia circular, proteção climática e materiais mais seguros e sustentáveis. Desenvolvemos novas metas de sustentabilidade ao longo de várias décadas. Metas que nos ajudarão a nos tornar neutros em carbono até 2050 e nos levarão a um mundo sem desperdício de plástico. Como? Reduzindo em 15% nossas emissões líquidas anuais de carbono em 10 anos. Parar o desperdício de plásticos na fonte através de investimentos que aumentem muito a reciclagem ou reutilização até 2030. E fechando o ciclo para que todos os nossos produtos vendidos em aplicações de embalagem sejam reutilizáveis ou recicláveis até 2035. Continuaremos a liderar a indústria na compra e no uso eficiente de energia renovável e a investir em processos de próxima geração e produtos de baixo carbono que proporcionem um ambiente mais limpo e sustentável. Faremos parcerias ao longo da cadeia de valor para coletar, gerenciar e separar melhor os resíduos plásticos e explorar maneiras de reutilizar esses resíduos para criar materiais para uso diário. E vamos usar a nossa ciência de materiais para ajudar a tornar as embalagens mais reutilizáveis e recicláveis, para proteger os produtos que consumimos. E apoiamos empresas, governos e comunidades para se tornarem livres de resíduos. Na Dow, acreditamos que um futuro sustentável é possível, através da inovação, investimento e colaboração. E estamos fazendo disso nosso negócio, para ajudar nossa indústria e nosso planeta a alcançar esse futuro.
Good morning. Welcome to another online event of Editora Globo, this time held in partnership with Dow and broadcast on Valor Econômico social media channels. Today we're going to talk about carbon neutrality and the circularity of the economy as key aspects in the new business model based on ESG criteria, which is environment, social, and governance. We will focus on the advances and challenges in the journey towards zero carbon and the adoption of a truly circular economy in Brazil. My name is Sônia Consigli Favaretto. I am a columnist for the Valor Invest website. I have worked with sustainability communication and private social investment for over 20 years, and I am proud to have been recognized as a SDG pioneer by the United Nations Global Compact. I'll be mediating this debate between key players of the industry who will talk about the challenges to reach carbon neutrality and adopt the circular economy. It is a pleasure to introduce my guests.
Cristina Rabe, Vice President of Strategy and Development at Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute. Cristina leads innovation and collaboration initiatives on circular economy using products, business models, and systems that create a positive impact on the planet and on people's lives. Carlo Pereira, Executive Director of the UN Global Compact Network Brazil. Carlo has more than 2 decades of experience in sustainability and institutional relations, having worked on issues related to climate change, private social investment, ESG, SDGs, and on other topics. And Javier Constante, President of Dow Latin America since 2019. He is responsible for developing and overseeing the company's regional strategy and financial performance with the goal of turning it into the most innovative, sustainable, inclusive, and customer-centric material science company in the world. To that end, Javier has been sharpened his focus on the company's ESG journey and strategy in Latin America. Welcome, everyone. Before starting the discussion, let's hear a few words from each of our guests. I'm going to start with you, Christina. Welcome. Tell us about circular economy and the work developed by Cradle to Cradle Institute. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you so much, Sonia, and it's just a pleasure to be here with such esteemed colleagues and to share some thoughts around the circular economy and how it links also to the climate action agenda. If we think about the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute and our work, I would like to go back to the year 2002. Some of you might remember that a book was published in that year called Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way We Make Things. And that was a book published by the two of our founders. And it basically laid out a whole new way of designing products and materials and business models and systems. And the cradle-to-cradle principles are principles that are inspired by nature. So looking at nature, that everything that is there basically is a resource for something else. Nature uses clean and renewable energy, if you think about the solar energy, and it celebrates also diversity. And these are very early thinkings and principles really form the foundation of a circular economy, how we know it today, which basically is a systems level approach to economic development that has a positive impact on people and on the planet. If we look around us, everything has been designed by someone. Important decisions are being made in the design stages. And the concept of a circular economy is really about designing waste and pollution completely out of the system so that they don't occur in the first place at the beginning. And that requires, of course, that we drastically rethink the systems we are operating in, the business models, but also the products and the materials that are going into a circular economy. This is where the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute comes in. We basically have a very bold vision inspired by the circular economy, that we see a world where safe materials and products are designed and manufactured in a prosperous circular economy to maximize health and well-being for people and the planet. And we achieve this basically by future-proofing the circular economy with a global framework and a global standard that the Institute has developed called Cradle to Cradle Certified and Cradle to Cradle Product Standard. We as an institute, we are a nonprofit organization. We were founded 10 years ago, and we basically developed this global internationally recognized standard that is science-based, that really helps businesses of all sizes and demographies to make products and materials that are fit for a circular economy. And we also redefine the circular economy in a way that it's not sufficient to just look at looping materials, products in a cycle, but it's also important that what goes into the cycle is safe, and that the circular economy also takes the element of responsible manufacturing and social fairness into practice. So our approach takes a very holistic approach towards the circular economy, looking at safe, circular, responsibly made products, systems, and basically business models. And of course, there's a very strong link also to the climate action, to the climate agenda when we think about a circular economy. And I look forward to discussing this a little bit further throughout the session.
That's great, Christina. Thanks. I think it's key when you bring decision-making into the design stage, the beginning of the process. That's where we are actually going to make structural changes. Thanks for now. Now I'm going to give the floor to Carlo. There's a lot to be discussed about the Global Contacts initiatives. Based on our themes today, we'll go deep into it, but what can you tell us from the relationship between the Global Compact and circular economy and low carbon and zero carbon. Welcome, Carlos.
Sonia, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here with you all. I'd like to greet Cristina and Javier and Sonia. These are paramount subjects, the most important ones, so we can guarantee our life on Earth. We need to internalize in an effective and definitive manner. They are all interlinked. When we talk about circular economy, we need to pay attention to the low carbon economy, obviously, and what we've been doing with the Global Compact. It flows. It has been established to discuss those issues. And where do I want to get with that? When the compact was created, it's been created in the beginning, by the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000, when it was founded. But since 1997, 1998, we've been discussing within the United Nations, because what we call the third wave of globalization, where companies start bringing their production abroad to countries in development, that's when we see that they are bringing development. They also bring some environmental impact, social and environmental impact, which are negative most of times. So obviously, politically speaking, our world started to organize to look at from closer in order to understand how economy could act upon those issues in order that those companies wouldn't be harmful to those places. But on the other hand, what's being preached nowadays in circular economy is how can we regenerate the environments? So said that this was the very reason the Global Compact was founded. And what we have from now so far, and as you know, we established an engagement on the corporate leadership that sends a symbolic letter to the General UN Secretary, mentioning the 10 principles of the Global Compact regarding labor issues, environmental issues, and so on. And also on the SDG, which are the Sustainable Development Goals, which in a very broad definition is what we need to do regarding our environmental and social issues, also regarding governance, so we can guarantee the next generations on Earth. This is what the Compact is about, and what we've been doing, increasingly doing in Brazil. And I'm proud to say that Rede Brasil is the third biggest worldwide. And Sonia had been a former president on the council. I need to remember that. We've been working with systems in order to try to be an action platform. That's what we need now. And what we need to make very clear is that all the reasoning on the circularity is important. And we are talking to Cristina. I've read a lot the book you mentioned, Cristina, in 2002, 2003, right? And my master's degree was about that, how we were thinking about biodiesel, conceiving circularity and analyzing the lifespan of biodiesel. And I'm saying that not to mention my master's degree, but because it has a lot to do, everything to do with what we are discussing. How can we, and then I bring it to the Brazilian example, how can we understand what are the potentials of the Brazilian market, not only to our internal market, but to the markets abroad. In that moment that we knew that the low carbon economy, something regarding circularity, makes us remain competitive. I would like not to take too much time in this beginning, we are in a very moment. You need to be very clear about that. Europe starts establishing taxes, entrance taxes for products related to carbon-related products. The USA has mentioned that they will be doing that. China as well. are structuring in that sense. This is a challenge for Brazil, indeed, but it's an immense opportunity given our energy grid, which is vocationally like that, but we also have the Brazilian technology. In relation to fuels, we have a relative footprint in most of our products. So at this moment, where we discuss circularity, we discuss a low carbon economy, net fuel, that's a very special moment for Brazil, for the products we are doing here and conceiving the external market. And agriculture, Brazilian agriculture is something that always has opportunities to move on. And we need to be sure that it is already sustainable. And we can right now earn a lot. That's why we have the Global Compact, in order to think how to unlock those chains.
Thanks, Carlo. It was a great introduction, I think. First of all, thanks for your words. I think, we are responsible for working towards the Global Compact and initiatives, but you gave us a good overview. The Global Compact Brazil Network has a really good reference. They expanded a lot, and you are bringing companies into play now. So I'm going to invite our next guest. You talked about two key words, which is the company's role and leadership. So now I'm going to invite Javier to the conversation. How do you see these issues that have been brought up in our debate, but how Dow relates to these topics that we are discussing today in terms of carbon and circular
Thank you,
economy?
Sonia. It's a pleasure to share this session with so prominent professionals. Carlos mentioned something very important. Companies have a fundamental role in that subject on carbon and circular economy. But I would like to say that regarding Dow, our initiatives, by and large, including sustainability, these are long-standing discussions within many organizations. The first goals of sustainability established by they recall from 1995. Obviously, over the years, these goals had changed because the world has changed as well. But we have very well-structured programs that reaffirm this culture with initiatives in order to change the day-by-day actions, in order to implement them later on in our lives, within the companies. And the goal in general is accelerating the transformation of the business ecosystem, having sustainability as a path obvious that will guide us from now on. So obviously, the economic development must be intimately linked to the wellness of our society. They need a license to operate. Companies wouldn't exist if there was no society to allow them to operate, to offer labor, but also, and maybe this concept that's something that have been considered. In Dow, we have this concept very well established. Hence, sustainability is the founding stone for our business. We just announced it for 2020, not only the sustainability goals, within a whole pandemic period, people mention, would that be, Javier, does it make sense that Dow is stepping? Well, the world is moving, is evolving. We can't stand still. And the biggest goals around on carbon emission, we have operations, and we want to eliminate the plastic residue within the environment, making it a circular element. No one gets scared because Dow is one of the biggest producers of plastic worldwide. This lets us with a great responsibility, because plastic is in everyone's mouth. It's in the environment. Politically speaking, sociologists NGOs, influencers, and so on. Everyone talks about plastic. That brings us a great responsibility, but we are not here to take this responsibility as a whole. Carlo mentioned, I loved what you said, Carlo. For Brazil, it is an opportunity. This infrastructure basis for sustainable energy lets the country in a very important moment. For example, in Bahia, we have our biggest plant in Brazil, and it generates 75% of the energy we consume. And we just made an agreement with Atlas Renewable to consume more solar energy. That will mean a reduction in carbon emission of 25,000 tons a year, which is equals to not throwing away 38,000 books. That's very important. For plastics, I would say we will launch, but we already launched reusable plastic to be used in new products. I will talk more about that later on. And among other types of initiatives, we have a plant in the northeastern region, and we have 45,000 hectares of Amazon forest. And we have a project which is called IBAN, together with Nature Conservancy Institute, so that people and the population, though the inhabitants within that place, are able to circulate and sustain, taking out from their Amazonian biodiversity product that can be very good for the cosmetic industry. So sustainability, which is not only a sustainable environment. When we are talking about sustainability, we need to conceive that towards society as well. And that's a concept very well established within Dow. And we need to keep on working in that.
Great, Javier. You touched many subjects that we will discuss further, but I'd like to highlight this issue of sustainable development goals that have evolved because the world has evolved. And that's what we talk about in this agenda. It's an easy target, and we have to keep on going. And you also bring fundamental issues from a CEO, which is undertaking responsibility and undertaking commitment. And you have been great at that, and gives me another, leads the way to my first question. We are just about to start the debate, and please feel free if you'd like to add any comments to other people's speech. And now I'm gonna ask Carlo about goals, targets. One of the most propositive agendas in the Global Compact is the definition of targets. You have been leading many in that sense. One that is directly related to our theme is the pledge to net zero carbon, challenging the companies within the network to establish thematic goals. So from your standpoint and what you have been experienced with the companies, what would you say are the biggest challenges that companies face to undertake those targets, and why is it important to define targets? You just launched the 2030 Observatory, so it's important for you if you could explain it to us.
It is like we have goals for all companies. So what I mean by that is that we want to tackle in a serious manner those systems. We need to establish goals. I know that very often when we talk about sustainability, by and large, there are also social issues and environmental issues, and people generally say, but we shouldn't be applying goals or something like that, that are important for us, having goals, morally important. That's cool, I get it, but we need to apply goals. And aside of being an internal goal, that must bear a public interest. The Global Compact is not poising a knife in anyone's necks. When we are saying that we have like one of the biggest managers, will have what is mentioned. I am not doing nothing but supporting society. And Javier and you mentioned as well, we are in a moment, in a very different moment. The zeitgeist now is another. Nowadays, our society is concerned with that. People want to know whether companies are moving on with what's necessary. And trust is involved. 80% of the worldwide population is not an equal number for all countries, but what's being shown is that 80% of the population understands that the corporate and agricultural leaders must act. And that's something important. We have to put this commitment to society so they understand we are taking it seriously. And of course, we need to be serious on what we intend to do. And what I mean by that, when we establish, we've seen many persons talking about carbon neutrality for 2050, 2060, 2030, 40. Well, cool. But what is the very first step? What is your short-term goal? What is your long-term goal? What is your midterm goal? That's why we assemble an observatory based in some parameters. And when I'm talking about the commitment, the goals, it is not because we are threatening anyone. Actually, we want to help in this transition phase. It's a quick transition. It's as that quote we've seen by Al Gore when he came here to the event, he said that this resolution on the accountability is deeper than the Industrial Revolution, and it is moving quicker than the Internet Revolution. That's what we are talking about. Hence, we've launched this program to support companies on accomplishing their goals.
Perfect. This Al Gore sentence is stark one. Soon we'll have Christina to give her standpoint on the evolution, the technological evolution. But since you talked about commitments and goals, my question to you is, Javier, is Dow announced in June challenging targets for climate change and plastic waste in their production cycle. One of them is to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. What can you highlight from these announcements? What path did Dow follow? Tell us a little bit more about these announcements, Javier, please.
Sonia, I agree with Carlo, most likely because I am a lot of engineer on my affection. Things must be measured. So, and it must be, there are no such thing as voluntary actions. Regarding neutrality within Dow, we have these 3 goals for the next years. Being carbon neutral up until 2050, but we have a goal for 2030 as well. I loved your comment, but I also 1 million tons to be collected and recycled until 2030, and offering 100% of reused products in packaging applications until 2035. It all seems quite simple when we say it, but it generates at the same time a technological complexity. When you're under pressure, the technological development takes place. But I hate saying that, but when our world was at war, the technological development took place strongly because it was a world in a crisis. And I think right now, in terms of greenhouse gas, oh, sorry, I was using a term in Spanish. But greenhouse gas, these are the nowadays emergencies, and it demands answers. That's why we have to act quickly in this aspect. So there we could say we are investing in low carbon technology. We are a petrochemical company, and we are talking about cracker. It's our main And we know cracking has a level of emission, and we are working extensively in that, talking with our pilots, obviously, regarding Europe, because there we have the biggest acceleration and reduction on carbon emission factors in order to reach a global level, the carbon neutrality up to 2030. And we've established the evolution of plants that will be managed by these technologies regarding an emission in reduction emission. But we need to start with the biggest ones. And regarding plastics, there's a lot to be said. And I could speak for hours regarding recyclables, because I recently took this job by the end of 2019, but the president of Plastics Europe. So there's a lot of compositions, but the first one of them and most basic one is taking plastic waste and turn it into a raw material for the packagings. It is not everything regarding plastic circularity, but it takes a good hand of that. Aside from that aspect, in Brazil, we've done an agreement with 2 foundations to do a selective collectors selecting each type of plastic, not a virgin plastic, but something that has been transformed in order to be used as raw material within a quality deemed as good and reasonable, that this packaging coming from garbage must participate from new packages. Hence, it demands a rather sophisticated technology. And also, we participate in other types of associations in order to cover the global effects of plastic pollution in the oceans. From rivers worldwide, 10 rivers worldwide had contributed to the pollution in the oceans, from which 7 are in Asia, unfortunately. That such a thing cannot be done by one single company. So regarding plastic waste, that's a concern from companies where we will apply money to establish the structural solutions on the disposal of waste before reaching oceans. When you have an issue of a flooding at home, what do you do first? Do you throw water away or try to repair the hole in the pipes? We are trying to repair the hole in the pipes. Many similar actions, but there must be measured, announced, and monitored all together in order to verify that such an investment that we are doing is consistent and it is not something lost over time.
Great, Javier. And really, as you said, we could be here for hours and discuss it for hours. And it's great that you already mentioned the DCR, PCR. I would like to hear more about this great solution. And then as part of your solution.
I'm sorry, Sonia. Can we do some comments, some quick comments, 30 seconds? Sorry for interrupting, but I would like to mention that something we are dealing with Dow's goals. I would like to salute Javier for having the courage to do that. And that's not something easy. That's something very important. For those who are listening to us, it's not about taking the latest fashionable goal. Your company Dow is something intensive in carbon. So they've reached something regarding their own context, the materiality. So we need to look at our business, establishing commitments for that, what we are exerting negative and relevant impact, or have something potentially important. It is important, again, congratulations, Javier, but materiality is crucial, is vital. We cannot just like apply things randomly. We need to be careful with that.
That's perfect, Carlo. Thanks for your comment. Please feel free to add, to jump in. This is a chat. Javier said something that reminds me of Churchill. We should not waste a good crisis. Obviously, a pandemic, it's bad. It's a shame to talk about the good side of the pandemic, but we have realized that the world is interconnected. You cannot separate governance from environment and challenges. So thanks for your contribution. You also talked about technological development. So I'm going to ask Christina to take the floor. Innovation is key for sustainability. We cannot have a solution from the 20th century to the 21st century. We have to find new solutions. Your institute is dedicated to pushing innovation into the circular economy through products and business that have a positive impact on the people and planet. So we'd like to hear from you. What have been discussed as the state of the art of this system? What are the next trends for the over 5-7 years ahead, Christina? What are the trends?
I would like to comment, how important it is to set targets, to set goals, in particular those, that are science-based. And in particular, to enable the industry and all the stakeholders to have a very clear action plan and a very clear roadmap of how achieving these targets. And that is something, the SDGs are, of course, putting forward. That is something, the Cradle to Cradle certified product standard is putting forward. So it's increasingly important, in nowadays and for the future to even move beyond the goal setting in really demonstrating that progress has been made and also verifying, externally validating the progress that companies and various stakeholders do. Before I speak about some of the latest circular economy thinking, I do want to highlight that, of course, the circular economy is intrinsically linked to the climate action agenda. And allow me to give a little bit of statistics, because I think it's very, very interesting to know that if we look at addressing the climate agenda and the greenhouse gas emissions, we know that only about half of these greenhouse gas emissions can be addressed when looking at renewable energy solutions and when doing resource efficiency measures. So the other half, it's about 45% of the greenhouse gas emissions, must really be addressed from how we make the products and how we use the products. And this is really the direct link to solutions from the circular economy, also to the climate action. And we know, for example, that a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions come from embodied emissions. So these are scope 3 emissions that you will see in the supply chain when making products and materials, and they of course urgently also need to be addressed apart from the scope 1 and the scope 2 emissions, which leads me basically to the trends, because that is a very big the discussion where the circular economy is also moving, how solutions can be put forward in terms of technology, but also in terms of the manufacturing of products, in terms of the choices of materials in products to really mitigate and to contribute to the reduction of the embodied emissions. And I want to mention, everybody speaking about the net zero here. And I would want to push this thinking a little bit further, because in our framework, it is about not climate neutrality, it's about climate positivity. So in the ideal case, we would get to a system that generates more in terms of the energy, than it basically takes, and really has a positive impact on the various developments around sustainability. So climate positivity, moving even beyond the net zero target, is also a trend, is a development that we see in the circular economy. Some of my colleagues have mentioned a few examples on innovations already. And I want to highlight what we see in terms of trends, that there's much more intrinsic connection between the product circularity, the business model circularity, and the system circularity. That is definitely driving innovations. And let me give you a few examples. If we look at the built environment, so the construction industry, which is really a big one in Brazil, was of course responsible for a lot of the emissions and having a big leadership opportunity. What the state-of-the-art discussions, for example, is that the buildings are set up in a way that the materials that are used in the buildings, the building products, be it glass, be it cement, be it different furniture, flooring that goes into that, are really done in a way that they are circular, that they are safe for the environment, for the humans, and that buildings can be considered as material banks. So at one stage when they are disassembled and, for example, used as a resource for building new buildings, the materials have really a high value in it and can be easily cycled for future uses in new buildings. So that's one big debate and development in the built environment. Or packaging was already mentioned. So packaging and the discussions are really going beyond cycled or recycled content or renewable content, but really looking at the recyclability of packaging, compostability, looking at how it can be reused, how potentially new packaging solutions could look like in the application. For example, refill systems is also something quite interesting in the consumer facing packaging area. And maybe a last example around the textiles apparel industry, also a big industry in Brazil, where we see more and more discussions. How can materials be chosen to be easily disassembled? We see a lot of trends around new type of materials, monomaterials that are coming forward. And most importantly, to build an infrastructure, to have also the consumers involved in the circular economy in form, for example, of take-back schemes. So getting really the product back in the cycle to make new products of the products that have reached the end of life. So quite a lot of innovation, I would say, always at the nexus of product, business model, and system changes.
Christina, it was great to hear all that and to learn that these new solutions are a reality, and that's what we need. Now I'm going to get back to Javier, because you brought up some issues that connect with Christina speech. You talked about plastic. We know plastic plays a really great role. Christina talked about supply chain, how to engage our consumers and suppliers. And I know that behind the PCR, the first post-consumer resin that is fully recyclable in Latin America, launched by Dow, there are 2 years of very interesting collaborative work behind this development. So please explain this initiative and how it fits into Dow's joint efforts towards
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for the opportunity on talking about our new stuff. But can you imagine how would be life without plastic in our pandemic? Plastic must be recyclable. And to me, this project in Latin America is one of the biggest reasons of being proud, actually, because it is a project we employed in partnership with Amerinha, and the project is called Transforming Recycling. It guarantees a source of consistent waste for producing new resin, the PCR. When you have reasonable waste, which is mixed to other things a lot dirty, you'll be unable to produce something. This project is being done in São Paulo, and it has gathered 5 cooperations who had been trained, where we trained our collectors, providing all PPEs so they could do their job, so that collecting waste is as safe as it gets. This project has generated a fantastically good raw material to produce PCR, because producing PCR is a very easy technology. The most complicated is bringing the raw material in optimal quality. So this quality enhancement in a huge scale has guaranteed us learning that will be broadened to other projects But I would like to say the social connotation of that project, because we were able to have 200 people employed who benefited 450 families. And that means that our PCR, our recycling, is not only supporting the environment, it is supporting society as well. To me, by and large, the biggest challenge to recycle plastic is reaching a logical quality, and that must reach Latin America, and the same project with other variations that we've been doing worldwide. But what I'm proud is that we were able, first of all, we were able to find partners, and those partners are extraordinary. Secondly, being able to generate a technology that can be leveraged worldwide. But I think that I would like to wrap up this part with one comment. This issue on plastic waste cannot be solved only by these means. We need something rather holistic. We need also that the issues, that governments establish policies. I know that Carlo, maybe even by taxations, but they must be well applied. Segregation of waste that also we need to educate people to get to know what is good to be done, like separating waste, because if you are throwing it away, we need to do our part. And our program, by and large, is not only about generating PCR, but also training and educating people. But we need some support and help here in order to have a response as good as we need.
Great. I'm gonna tell Carlos to add to your speech as well, but there are two comments. First, when you talk about training the pickers, the social aspect, this is a great thing. It's great to see that you are, there's a pandemic, and the pandemic gave a lot of emphasis to the ESG aspect. It's really needed. And then you talked about collaboration. There are major challenges to be solved, and you need everybody involved, governments, partnerships, and the ways of implementing things, which I think is the foundation of everything you do. Now I'd like to hear about Carlo. Please feel free to add comments to what we said, but I'd like to ask you about the circular economy. I'd like to know, when you look at the Global Compact Network Brazil and the companies that are signatories, in which stage do you believe we are in implementing the circular economy as
Thank you, Sonia.
from the company's
side?
It
is a difficult answer, because when you are talking about circular economy, well, Cristina has put forth in details, but we are about what we need to do, but we are also talking investments and everything that we take from nature, and that this is the new view on circularity, the regeneration, and how can we do that for diminishing, so we can have a circularity of products. Namely, we take from some place, but we keep it moving on. How will Brazil do that? What I think, Sonia, honestly speaking, is that companies, when we are talking about circular economy, by and large, they have projects and initiatives. They don't have what most say that, which is a paramount strategy on those issues. Let's say, oh, I have a circularity strategy, a sustainability strategy. They don't. What they have are a few actions and initiatives for that. I think Brazil has a lot to go. Cristina mentioned the construction, and I've been from the construction sector, and in fact, we have 1/3 of waste in civil construction in Brazil. The same for food. So when Brazil increases, returns to the map of hunger, and what we see is that hunger increases in Brazil has been a few years, recent years, and we have 30% of waste. So we have an action with ABRAS, it's the Brazilian Association of the Supermarkets, so we can reduce that number, which is so alarming. And what we know at the same time that the challenges are tremendous, that demand technology, as Javier mentioned, actually, if we use the existing technologies, but using them in an intelligent manner, and as Javier mentioned, being able to align all sectors in society, government, civil society, and companies will be able to move further in that. I think it's a lot, rather an articulation challenge and application than a challenge regarding technology. Of course, technology is helpful. So just to wrap this up and answer you, I think that we have a lot of challenges to be solved, undoubtedly, and many opportunities on the table as well.
Great. It's a mix between challenge and opportunity. Very well put. Christina, now I'm going to use Carlos' final words, and I'd like to hear your opinion on how much, from your standpoint, how much the companies you have been working with on the Institute, have they been able to move from action into strategy in circular economy? You are working in the Institute today, but you have many experiences, many years of experience working with other institutions, with private and public sectors. So how do we evaluate this issue that Carlo pointed out, strategy and evaluation?
Yes, and Carlo mentioned a fundamental element for really succeeding with the circular economy and the whole climate agenda is really to have the right mindset. I mean, it's right. It starts with the mindset. It starts with the awareness. And before even taking the actions, if we want to have a really holistic and comprehensive action, it's really about setting this strategy. The strategy, that is not an isolated strategy of circularity or, some sustainability topics and then, some business topics, but ideally integrating this kind of circularity thinking in a business strategy, in a comprehensive sustainability strategy, because that will be required to really take good action on the circular economy in context, because, all the SDGs are interlinked with each other. So are the different circularity topics. So it is absolutely essential. I would say, in our community at the Institute of Companies, we are leadership standard, and the companies start basically with integrating this thinking in their strategy, in their way of doing business before moving further in our certification and in the standard. But it's just important to start somewhere. And you ask also, where are we on the implementation agenda? I mean, if we take the entire world, there's always the circularity gap report every year. Beginning in the first quarter, it comes out. And this year's gap report basically said that the world currently is 8.6% circular. So it also really shows the long way that we still have to do, and also the urgency behind that. I would say, from our interaction with Brazilian companies, there's a tremendous leadership potential, a tremendous potential for innovation. We observe that many start, let's say, on the recycling journey. Very often recycling is still thought about as a circularity, and starting from recycling, there are then the further steps that can be done towards a whole system change. But I would say progress is being made, opportunities are there, but of course, knowing the state of the world with the 8.6% circular, the need for action is also clear, and the urgency to move on the agenda. And I want to stress, Javier said, is also the partnership aspect. So to really make a circular economy happen, partnerships are essential in the supply chain, within companies, company departments really working together. And then, of course, if you want, public-private partnerships in terms of the international agenda as well.
Yeah, undoubtedly, partnership is the key word here. Now I'm going to keep talking to you, and I want to ask question to each one of you before the final considerations. Carlo, the Global Compact is a great campaign. I loved it. It's accept this pen. So please give a pen to someone who has decision-making responsibility and power so they can undertake the commitment. We know that leadership is key to implementing this strategy. Is the tone at the top, which is important. That's how things happen. So from each one of you, how do you evaluate the current leadership status, both from companies, from governments, but how do we evaluate the leadership's actions to help us move into the circular economy? We're just about to participate in the Glasgow Forum. But I'd like to hear from you, from each one of you, how do you see the leaderships taking action? And I'd like to start with Javier, please.
Sonia, to me, the biggest challenge is how will companies reach those goals that we will establish, that had been anticipated. As I mentioned before, reaching those goals means technological development, and technological development can be accelerated, but sometimes we are unable to accelerate that much. In some places, for example, in Europe, where they have global compact, all goals had been anticipated. They've made a plan with a certain extent, and then all of a sudden, everything changes. I cannot say it's not an important, I won't say it's not an important subject, but we need to play with well-established goals. So investments are done, and then we developed afterwards. My concern nowadays is that continued change regarding the anticipated goals by given political or social or environmental reasons that don't let industries outside that. This is a challenge, but we will make it.
That's great. I like this positive message, which is a major challenge. We have to be positive. Carlo, let us know about perspectives for leaders in
Sonia,
leadership.
As you know, that I generally say, it is a total mess. I don't know how the interpreter is going to translate that, but that's total chaos. The leaderships know they have to act. It is clear from the society, from what the society is being demanding. I think the last barrier to be won regarding sustainability. And however, in fact, this is that very moment when we are thinking on the CEOs. It's the moment where councils are not totally bought by the agenda, but the CEO needs to make their decisions. So it's a difficult moment. I would like to wave to something that I deem as important. In Boston, in an event, we had the CEOs from Fortin interviewing the CEO from Gap, and Gap CEO mentioned that something happened in the meeting of the company, and one of them was desolated. And we came to talk to him. So why are you looking at me like that? He said, look, you know, I've been a CEO here, right? So being CEO back then, in my time, it was way easier. It was all about the bottom line, the result. Everyone was glad. Nowadays, no. Nowadays, CEOs. And in fact, this is no longer an option. They are what is called as the state CEO. So there are answers to be given to society. So it's very complex. I should say it is not easy for leaderships, but as Javier mentioned, I think everyone is aware of that challenge, and I'm sure that we'll be able to move on. It is not only that. Then you had, it's not only about sustainability, but also about diversity, you know, and the metrics. But you know what? I think it is a lot more satisfying, personally speaking, nowadays, from the perspective of personal fulfillment. You have a lot more personal fulfillment now than before. And it's in our nature, human nature. I've been reading a lot about that, and the supremacy on shareholder economy, Milton Friedman, it wasn't natural for men and women. And why is that? Because that was something that we had to do everything that was possible to focus on the interest of shareholders. Companies weren't like that in the 1960s. There's always been that, what we mentioned, the fulfillment. People had a perception that work was being well done. Once we had an economic result, regarding your responsibility, we are collaborators. But over the decades, we've noticed that it's been playing a lot against our nature. So I think the time now is time to leaders being able to be more humane. And I think this sentence was said by Kofi Annan in 1999 on the launching of the compact. For you, company leaders and United Nations would like to establish a global compact grounded on simple values to make it a more humane market. So I think that that's what happened. But if you allow me, Christine, I would like to say that that's although Sonia has asked before, and I think you could answer that.
Yeah, I can answer. As I answered, of course, sorry, I have some delay with the translation, right? I hear you a little bit delayed. Yes, I mean, my thinking is that, also the types of I would say it differently when Sonia comes, but I mean, the types of CEOs are also changing, right? I mean, the definition of a CEO is changing, is different than it was 20, 30 years ago. And I really think that brings lots of opportunities for the sustainability agenda. Intrinsically, let's say, in the type of role, how it has evolved. But then if we think a little bit more bottom up, of course, through the whole investor agenda, because the CEO agenda is often linked to the investor agenda, and, with sustainability coming more in the focus of financial institutions and investors, that I think also drives a lot and elevates also the leadership agenda there.
I keep speaking Portuguese, but it wouldn't be an issue speaking in English to you, but let's move on in Portuguese for the channels.
Of course. I'm so sorry that I don't speak Portuguese.
No. But no, please. But when you looked to a mission from Dow, we master the chemistry for the benefit of societies, shareholders. And by the end of the day, those decisions meant nothing. And one of the things, for example, that took place in Dow with our CEO, they used to say that the only thing they want Dow to be is something rather more sustainable. And because we found out that we are in the middle of an environment inclusive, we discovered that we have employees, customer centric.
Yes.
We have customers.
Yes, absolutely.
And that makes a difference to our employees. That's incredible. That's what I was talking with Carlo before. Realizing that we are not only working to have a salary, but to do something good in the universe you take part, because I think it makes a lot of difference.
Absolutely.
And being a CEO nowadays is a different thing, is a different tone. There's this role on the CEO when you think, I'm not sure whether is that global, like 3 construction workers doing the same thing. One of them look, I am putting brick over brick, and the other saying, I'm making a wall, and the third says, I'm making a cathedral. And what I comment nowadays that the purpose, the cause is intertwined in society, that no one wants to do something else that is not a part of a global compact. So if their job is not bearing a perception that such a job is holding a greater cause, it won't work in nobody. It's something very difficult to reach the good talents to our companies nowadays. We need to be focused on that.
Guys, it has been an amazing conversation. I have learned so many things from you, but unfortunately, we have to wrap up. So I'm going to ask each of the guests to give their final comments, starting with Christina. Christina, if you will.
Yeah, I'm really happy to reflect after such a rich and insightful discussion, and I have to say, from all that we have heard and what we are seeing, I feel very optimistic. I think that basically the subject matter is very much in the awareness of companies, of governments, also increasingly of consumers, of the broader public, and I feel encouraged now by the leadership that I'm seeing. Many companies are taking, be it around the circular economy agenda, be it on the SDGs, be it on the 1.5 degree ambitions that are being set forward. And I'm also quite encouraged by what I'm seeing from some of the leading governments in the world, where they really link the economic development of countries with ambitions around a fair and inclusive society, and also climate ambitions. And then, of course, there's all of us, right? So all of us who are, in systems, who work in companies, who buy basically products or services. It's really on all of us to consider, sustainability, circularity in the daily choices that we make, and with that we really can be part of such a big and important transformation that needs to draw on all of us, on governments, on companies, on different industry players, and on us also as individuals who can really move forward the agenda with purpose and with courage. And that's really the last point I would want to make. I think we still need more courage in all of our interactions. We need to move beyond, incremental changes that are still happening to really to a much more radical rethinking, shifting also of our behavior to really make together the circular economy and the climate action agenda happen.
Now we would like to hear from Javier. Javier, give us your final comments, please.
Is that this job cannot be done alone. We need a teamwork. This also involves my colleagues, presidents, and CEOs all over Brazil, and I hope you're watching that. And sustainability is not only what Dow is doing, what one company alone does, what Dow sectors does, or customers from Dow do. We need to work all together in order to generate a sustainable supply chain. And we also need to work together in order to raise awareness from society, but also from governments. In some places, it can be a little delayed. What sustainable must be managed from governmental and corporate perspectives. It was a pleasure participating from that.
Thank you, Javier. It's our pleasure. The pleasure is ours. Carlo, please.
Well, Sonia, it was great taking part here. What I would like to leave as a message is that for those who are still in the stage of denial, please move on. I have what's good or either a bad news for those who are still experiencing. Please give up, because the old model is no longer an inspiration. The 21st century is now released by the pandemic. So we are entering definitely in the 21st century with the values from the 20th century's values, bringing that for the core of the question. The good side, as I mentioned, is that we have plenty of opportunities on the table. So either by love or pain, but of course it's better by love. Come to our agenda and please use all the opportunities we have there.
Thank you very much, Carlo. I like to talk about you can either go through pain, love, or through intelligence. And I like to wrap up all live streamings with sentences and words that were struck me. So I like to talk about Christina when she said that we need a drastic redesign of the way we are operating in the world. That's for sure, Christina. Carlos, well, we need to internalize the system so we can preserve life on Earth. And I also like that you cannot just go into the target trend. That's not enough. And Javier, when you say something it's important to hear something from someone in your position. Sustainability is the way that will guide the business, the financial result of a company is the building block of our business. So I'd like to thank everyone on behalf of Valor Econômico, on behalf of Dow. Thank you. It was a great debate. Thanks to our viewers as well for being here with us this morning, and a moment so full of information and around a topic that is important and fundamental. If you'd like to watch this live streaming again, please go to Valor's social media channels, or you can have a look at tomorrow's live streaming that will be on. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much.
A sustentabilidade pode ser um catalisador para impulsionar a inovação e o crescimento dos clientes, para melhorar as operações, avançar na inclusão e enfrentar alguns dos desafios mais complexos do mundo? Nós acreditamos que sim. Para nós, sustentabilidade significa responsabilidade e oportunidade. Isso exige ciência e colaboração. Focados em mudar nosso mundo, a próxima década será fundamental. Para criar um futuro melhor para o nosso planeta, todos nós devemos agir. Devemos fazer a nossa parte. É por isso que nós da Dow estamos acelerando nossas ações de sustentabilidade, concentrando nossos esforços em 3 áreas que mais impactam o nosso negócio e onde podemos fazer a diferença: economia circular, proteção climática e materiais mais seguros e sustentáveis. Desenvolvemos novas metas de sustentabilidade ao longo de várias décadas. Metas que nos ajudarão a nos tornar neutros em carbono até 2050 e nos levarão a um mundo sem desperdício de plástico. Como? Reduzindo em 15% nossas emissões líquidas anuais de carbono em 10 anos. Parar o desperdício de plásticos na fonte através de investimentos que aumentem muito a reciclagem ou reutilização até 2030. E fechando o ciclo para que todos os nossos produtos vendidos em aplicações de embalagem sejam reutilizáveis ou recicláveis até 2035. Continuaremos a liderar a indústria na compra e no uso eficiente de energia renovável e a investir em processos de próxima geração e produtos de baixo carbono que proporcionem um ambiente mais limpo e sustentável. Faremos parcerias ao longo da cadeia de valor para coletar, gerenciar e separar melhor os resíduos plásticos e explorar maneiras de reutilizar esses resíduos para criar materiais para uso diário. E vamos usar a nossa ciência de materiais para ajudar a tornar as embalagens mais reutilizáveis e recicláveis, para proteger os produtos que consumimos. E apoiamos empresas, governos e comunidades para se tornarem livres de resíduos. Na Dow, acreditamos que um futuro sustentável é possível, através da inovação, investimento e colaboração. E estamos fazendo disso nosso negócio, para ajudar nossa indústria e nosso planeta a alcançar esse futuro.